So to start off with why new member recruitment matters, basically it's vital to the life of a Tau Pi chapter. We like to think about how chapters evolve in terms of this chapter development cycle. And as you can see, membership is a key aspect of it. Without a strong membership, it's unlikely that you're going to get great leaders. Without great leaders, the activities for the chapter are going to suffer. When the activities suffer, the image suffers. And then you have a negative feedback cycle where the membership is going to decline as a result. So stronger membership, all these things improve. Weaker membership, it all declines. Today, we're going to be talking about recruitment, and I think it's important to quickly talk about who we're targeting when we're recruiting. So the eligibility list should involve the top 1/8 of juniors and top 1/5 of seniors in all eligible engineering fields at your university. Some chapters have stricter requirements, just so you're aware. If so, those would be included in your chapter bylaws. You're also able to initiate the top 1/5 of graduate students who are at least halfway through their current degree. So for example, if they're working on a master's degree, that would typically be about a year through that degree. The list is usually acquired through either a registrar or dean's office or some faculty member or their office. But that can range quite wildly depending on the university. And schools will give you different degrees of info depending on their interpretation of FERPA. So some chapters do not get the whole list, or maybe they don't get like the list of emails, maybe they just get the names. That info can be limited, and some chapters don't even get the list at all. But usually in those cases, you can at least have the school send the letter on your behalf, and then you can find other ways to reach out to candidates. Speaking of reaching out to people, here are just some ideas on some low cost, low effort image boosting events that you can do on campus. A big one that I highly recommend based on my own experience was giving out free coffee or something along those lines. If you can do that outside of one of the major engineering buildings, all the better. But there are plenty of different ways that you can advertise your chapter that don't have to make a huge drag on your account. Some other image boosting resources that you should be aware of, and we will email these out afterwards. Big one is that through the Tau Pi store, you can actually get free posters that you can post all around campus to advertise the name of Tau Pi at least. We also have some good resources for things like sample initiation letters, PowerPoint presentations, and things like that I highly recommend you check out if you're building from scratch in terms of how you reach out to candidates. And we also like to advertise the Student Advisory Board's chapter toolkit, which includes additional sample letters and other things that you can do to build your brand on campus. So before we get into the panel, just some take-home messages that I wanted to cover before then. One, I highly recommend that you try to build your chapter's image on campus leading up to, right before, and even around the time of the eligibility letter being released. That way, when students get that email, saying, "Hey, you're eligible for Tau Pi," that way they already know what that is, and they can at least connect some kind of image to that name, and they won't immediately dismiss it as spam or some fraternity or something like that. They'll be more interested and keen to checking it out. We also highly recommend that you put a lot of effort and thought into the letter and any other recruiting efforts you do. You want to wow the prospective members with your initiation process so that it's well run, it's very professionally done, and it doesn't seem half-assed or anything like that. And when you're doing that, keep in mind that some of the best ways to boost your image are really cost-effective and targeted. So they don't necessarily need to cost a lot, but the more targeted you can do them to your prospective candidates, the better. And no matter what you're doing and what kind of image boosting or recruitment, make sure that you consider what kind of image you are sending when you carry out your efforts. So are you sending out an image of professionality or sloppiness? Are you sending out an image of fun or sort of rigid? consider what kind of image that you're sending out when you send out those things, especially in my opinion, the eligibility letter, that matters a lot.
One thing we did, so to give a little bit of background, California Xi is medium-ish, large-ish, somewhere in that vicinity right now. But we didn't start off that way. We started off really small, small to the point of there were literally 4 officers, and like we would initiate everybody that was eligible. So this strategy of ours has actually spanned multiple different sites, like as we've grown, so it works. We will typically go into freshman and transfer orientations at the beginning of the year. This is before the list even goes out, and during the summer too in some cases. And this allows us to capture a whole new audience and get our name out there. So freshmen will talk to them and say, hey, this is a thing, you can't join until you're a junior or a senior, but keep an eye out, we're important. Don't throw away the letter when you get it, kind of thing. And so that really helps us to sort of throw our name out there before people actually even get the letter in their hands. That's one big thing. And then with transfer students, they can join, the next semester or whatever after they've been included into the university. So it's important for us to get visibility to them right up front, because they're almost immediately going to be candidates.
This one I think can work for all the chapters, and that's a tutoring program. I've seen different chapters of different sizes implementing it, and it has worked. It doesn't just target the possible future candidates, it actually targets everyone in terms of letting them know who we are. And it doesn't take too much appropriation. Like you just basically more or less have to like some schedule, but as far as like the amount of work the members have to put into it, it's not as much. If like basically, let's say junior or senior electrical engineer has a tutoring session for basic circuits for like basically like, I don't know, like freshmen. Well, I don't know if the freshmen in every like school take it, but let's say like we in my school, one of the requirements for all of the majors is to take basic circuits. And I've seen civil engineers, mechanical engineers, and so on have trouble with some of the aspects of that. It doesn't take that much effort for a senior electrical engineer to tutor someone on KVL or KCL like problems for like basically like a sophomore like mechanical. So it's something that gets our name out there. It doesn't take that much effort, and it actually gives us a lot of brownie point with the college itself. So that's one of the ones that I've seen. Like for example, like actually this is a good one. Recently, like past after like the pandemic stuff was over, I was going to UCLA for their initiation, and I'm like trying to kind of like find my bearings. It's been a while. And I asked one of the students, and she was a math major, and I was wearing my Tau Beta Pi tie. She saw the bent, she recognized who we were. It's like, oh yeah, those are the guys with the tutoring out there, and took me to where the bent was. And from there, I could like figure out where I was. So that kind of like is one of the ones that boost our image.
It's funny, I actually had a very similar message to what Kavya said, which I guess is just a testament to how effective that can actually be. So also for reference, New Mexico Alpha, when I joined, was probably just a handful of students, and by the time I left, it was over 60. So we also spanned a considerable range of membership. And when Alan was presenting earlier, he was talking about how you can be both cost effective and targeted, and that can still be very effective. And I think one of the best ways to implement that is simply showing up to events that your university is holding, whether that's engineering local or really more broad. And so one of the most effective things that we found was this like type of freshman or transfer orientation, where you don't really have an agenda, you're just tabling there, and you try and make friendly conversation, direct contact with people. And so they're like, okay, I talked with some people in Tau Beta Pi and they seemed pretty cool. And you just kind of get on their radar. And, a few years later, sure enough, it's an eventual payoff. But we definitely had people joining saying like, yeah, I talked to you my freshman year. This sounded cool. So I've like been looking forward to joining. So I think that's a really valuable tool to use as well.
My college the engineering college held E-Week every year for Engineers Week. So we made sure to make a big showing of that. And we got like 3rd place my senior year. So that really got our name out there as well.
So we mail out the eligibility list or eligibility letter individually. We'll do something called envelope stuffing at the beginning of every school year or school semester, where we stuff envelopes with the letters, and we include a dean's letter, some general information about us, a bunch of so we'll also put on a barbecue, so we'll include a flyer. We recently started including a flyer for that. For the entire College of Engineering. That's an event that we do. So we advertise that to prospective members. So that's how we get the letter out there. Aside from sending out an eligibility letter, the school gives us, as part of our eligibility list, a set of phone calls or phone numbers in addition to the addresses of students. And so we get to actually cold call students and tell them about Tau Beta Pi, how awesome it is, why they should join, and invite them to our barbecue. It's great because the phone numbers are usually home phone numbers. So you get to talk to parents, grandparents, all sorts of fun people who get to pressure their child into joining Tau Beta Pi, which is prestigious. So it works out really well in our favor. In addition to that, we'll do class talks. So at the beginning of the semester, we'll go around and the officers will give brief presentations about what Tau Beta Pi is and how they should be looking out for eligibility lists that we post throughout the engineering building, and how that, how they can go look at those, see if their name is on there, and come find us and ask if they're eligible, if they don't know or don't see their name. So those are some strategies we utilize to grab people right after we send out the list.
The one that has kind of worked, or at least used to work well for us, and this one is specifically for smaller colleges, not smaller chapters, but smaller colleges, was to hand deliver the letters in classrooms and have the professors actually talk about it. So instead of us going to the classrooms, we had, let's say, for example, 1 or 2 professors that were members. At different times, some of them might have been advisors, and they would have either basically had a quick talk or showed a quick info video about Tau Beta Pi at the beginning of their classes. But another thing they would have done that was basically useful was to congratulate the candidates. So if they had their names, for example, that's one thing. But again, more and more we try to omit the names, but still the professor goes and says, I've found out that basically some of you guys have been selected or basically are candidates for the topic. I want to congratulate you guys, and kind of give that extra boost from a professor's side. But hand delivering it and basically professors kind of congratulating, it's been something that has worked well for smaller colleges and colleges that have common classes, core common classes for all of their majors. For the bigger ones, this one again, I don't know how it works or not, but one of the chapters in the convention actually mentioned that they did that and it worked for them, was that they used to post their dean's office used to post their dean's list on the college board, on their dean's college board, and next to it was the list of the Tau Beta Pi candidates. And a lot of times they had overlaps, but it was basically it wasn't something that a club is doing it. It's not something that a group is doing it. It's something that the dean's office is doing, and it gave it more weight.
The one thing that we really focused on at NM Alpha is fostering a good relationship with the dean of our College of Engineering. And that was so useful to us because we were able to, when the time came every semester, set up an appointment with the dean, go in and talk to them, and make sure that they're aware of when we need these eligibility letters sent out. And they were actually able to send it through the dean's office to all of the students. And I think that lends a certain amount of credibility to the announcement coming out when you're receiving it from the dean, rather than from a Tau Beta Pi email or whatever that may be. And I believe we even had them push that email a few weeks later if we were still waiting on hearing back from candidates. And so I think just that affiliation with the official College of Engineering staff and professors really helped the official nature of the email and garnered a lot more responses than we were getting previously. So, I think the action item to take away from that is just making sure that you're keeping consistent contact with the dean and making sure that you're updating them with how the chapter is doing and making sure that they're aware of all the activities. And that way, they're happy to help out when the time comes around for eligibility letters.
One note I would add is if your engineering dean is not a member of Tau Beta Pi, you can make them one, and that will make them more dedicated to Tau Beta Pi. So that's called Eminent Engineer. So if you're not sure about how to do that or about that, you can look that up on the Tau Beta Pi site for Eminent Engineer.
One of the other things that I've seen, it doesn't work for all the chapters, but it works for the chapters that have their bent promptly shown like somewhere on the college. It's like basically having kind of like when they're having their bent polishing, if they have bent polishing, that basically make kind of like a noticeable event. Something that people will basically see the bent, recognize the bent, and later on when they receive a letter, and like basically there is something there is like basically materials like literature, like something there, or even just basically the logo, they will kind of relate it to that and the fact that, well, they are legitimate enough that they exist on campus. It's not just something, some office somewhere corner of like some godforsaken place. No, it's something that prominent. Like
one thing we do at California Xi is we try to balance this idea of you get to be with a large community of people who are like-minded, think like you, work like you, have that same work ethic and level of integrity and responsibility towards their field and whatever they do. And we promote the fact that we have a lot of we're professional, so we give you a lot of professional resources to help you kickstart your career and things like that. That's sort of that's usually what we talk about in an effort to entice people. I've heard other groups say, oh, it really depends on the officer you talk to, but somebody might say, oh, it's a good resume booster. I don't really like that because it makes it feel like, you can write it down and that's the end of it. If you can emphasize the fact that you get to know a lot of people who you might not have otherwise met outside of your major and within your community who care about the same things you do, who care about engineering, I think that's a really big plus, and that's something that we usually try to highlight.
Basically, I focus on networking. Again, depends on who you're talking to, but like, yeah, I do focus it on networking, and I do try to give an image, a little bit long-term image, rather than, again, a lot of like students thinking, okay, I'm graduating, I'm looking for getting a job. Well, what about a year after that? What about 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the line? And I basically tell them how the networking opportunities and like basically people that they meet through Tau Beta Pi, either through convention, like district events, or even like just their own chapter, how it's going to be beneficial for them throughout the coming years, not just just put it on your resume, or like, oh, it's going to help you get this or that, but no, how it's going to help you 5 years from now, how it's going to help you 10 years from now, how it's going to help you during your job, how it's going to help you while basically you're maybe relocating for a job. And I have plenty of different actual like stories and like basically different things of personal experiences and my friends' experiences to give them if they have any questions about it. But yeah, networking would be my primary like elevator pitch.
The thing, I kind of like to focus on two things whenever I'm talking to someone personally about it, and that's one, relationships, and two, experiences. I think a lot of times, you can start going through that laundry list of things that they can participate in, and you kind of see their brain turn off and their eyes glaze over, and it's absolutely right that like, I think the personal anecdotes are really what can help, turn a corner for someone who might be interested. And so I like to just tell them, you know, a little bit of my experience and just let them know that, you know, I've met people through this organization that I continue to be friends with. And, you know, this is lasting long past when I'm actually in the organization at this university. And also, one of the things that I think Tau Beta Pi does really, really well as an organization is the district conferences and the national convention. And I let them know that those are absolutely fantastic experiences to be able to meet people and network, and also just, you know, experience a broad variety across the nation of what people and Tau Beta Pi has to offer. And so I let them know that, you know, when you're joining this, you not only get the local chapter events, but you also have the opportunity to potentially attend these other very cool events that can help your professional and personal development.